You're listening to Design Between the Lines, the only design and home furnishings podcast where we talk with the movers and shakers, industry innovators, and lifetime legends of the home furnishings industry. It's here that I get a chance to sit and chat with the influencers shaping the industry into what it is today, and to learn a little bit more about life in their world. This episode of Design Between the Lines is brought to you in collaboration with the American Home Furnishings Hall of Fame Foundation, the industry's organization that embraces all segments of home furnishings, honoring our leaders, telling our story, preserving our history, and launching a new initiative to inspire extraordinary leadership. Bob Maricich is widely recognized as one of the home furnishing industry's most innovative leaders. Currently the CEO of International Market Centers, Bob has previously served as an executive for many companies, including Century Furniture, American Drew Furniture, American of Martinsville, and Flex Steel Industries. He was instrumental in merging the World Market Center Las Vegas with the Keystone properties of High Point Market to form International Market Centers, the world's largest network of showroom and exhibition space in the furniture, gift, and home decor industries. Bob dropped by our studio in High Point to chat about his career, the importance of design in the furniture industry, his advice for furniture designers, as well as the future of IMC. Bob, welcome.
Good to be with you, John. Thank you for having me.
Great having you here. I wanted to, as I normally do at the beginning of these shows, I'm going to take you way back and ask you, how the heck did you get here? I know everyone says, it's not the destination, it's the journey. So what was your journey like to get to the point you're in now?
Well, the journey was, personally and from our family, pretty incredible. And like all journeys, there were hills to climb and, times of disappointment, et cetera. But I started as the first college graduate in my family, an immigrant family in Montana. And started at Texaco, and wow. From there got into the veneer business, and that for 8 or 9 years I was with a company called R.S. Bacon Veneer, and I had an engineering degree, so I was involved with manufacturing, which turned out to be a real break because I've had a lot of diversity in my career going along, but the veneer business allowed me to get to know furniture manufacturers and was an introduction to Flex Steel Industries, where I initially went as a product manager and then ended up starting their contract furniture division.
So that was a pivotal moment. You going from Texaco into the veneer business. How did that moment?
Pure luck. Pure luck. I got to Texaco, and at that time it was the second or third largest company in the world. Mm-hmm. They had, I think, something like 9,000 engineers in their Houston, Port Arthur facilities. And frankly, I found it very stifling. It was like working for the government.
Yeah, you're a number.
Yeah, and you could almost visualize that. Hey, down the road, if I do a really good job, I could be in this office, and down the hallway, and it just wasn't for me. Yeah. My wife had a shirt string relative that had a veneer business with a pollution problem, and I was just excited to be someplace where you could be entrepreneurial. Yeah. And 90 employees, and we had a veneer mill in Dubuque, Iowa. Ended up building a brand new facility in Grundy Center, Iowa.
Whoa!
And but it was great foundational work. I was the plant manager, the plant engineer, the purchasing manager.
You wore a lot of hats.
Yeah, you wear a lot of hats in a small business, and running a small business is in many ways more challenging, I think, than a big business because you don't have the large resources. But I went to Flex Steel and left Flex Steel. I was recruited away to by then a conglomerate within the industry, Ladd Furniture, who had the world's largest manufacturer of hotel furniture at the time, American of Martinsville. And it was an opportunity for me to run a company. And I was a young guy, and that was a great run of things. But we moved from Port Arthur, Texas, to Dubuque, Iowa, to High Point, North Carolina, back to Dubuque, Iowa, to Martinsville, Virginia, and did a little stint in between in Marshalltown, Iowa. And so, we really did follow opportunity along the ways. At American of Martinsville, it's a great company, and frankly, I was ill prepared to be a president and CEO. I had not worked closely and with one and seen how you did it, and so I had a lot of on-the-job learning.
I was going to say most of us, and you're very entrepreneurial. We have successes and failures, and sometimes, and more often is the case, we learn from our failures more than we learn from our successes, I guess.
Without a doubt.
And I'm sure you had some of those. Many people have been where you're sitting right now, and we've been through some amazing stories about how furniture lines launched and then never made it out of market. So I'm sure you've had a few of those experiences over the years.
Absolutely. Well, and I got there at American of Martinsville in 1989, and 1991 was just a horrible recession for the hospitality industry. And we had an annual plan to do about $125 million of sales, if I remember correctly, and we ended up doing something like 65 or 70. Had to close a couple factories. It was an incredibly challenging time. And probably on paper, it doesn't look like a real success, but from a management standpoint, I think it was a tremendous success that we survived, and we didn't lose money on a cash flow basis. And then went on to have a number of great years, and the company transitioned to a decade really of excellence. And then unfortunately, about 15 years after I left, it got in the wrong ownership hands and ended up going out of business. But it was a great opportunity. I went to another lad company, American Drew. My American Drew days were really interesting. It was a company that was really in transition and frankly in trouble. And I'll cut to the chase. I basically was fired. So here I am, a young guy on what I think was kind of a meteoric rise. And you have a humbling thing like that, and was very public. The front page of Furniture Today, and front page of the Martinsville Bulletin, and it stings. And but one of the great things about that, and I think to your point earlier, how adversity really builds character, is I didn't work for 6 months, and I found out who your friends were and who your friends weren't. And more importantly, you really have a great time of self-reflection. And not to put myself in the same category of leadership of people like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, but they talk about their times in the wilderness, where they really are able to, put in context what's important in life, and not just what you want to do, but what you won't do. So for me, it turned out to be an incredibly productive time. From there, I went to Century Furniture for a couple years, involved in sales management, and really was a step backwards, and then ultimately became the CEO of Century.
So with Century, and you became the CEO of that, what was their growth pattern like? And what were the years were we stuck in another recession at some point at that point, or were we coming out of it, or how was that growth?
I was there from 1996 until 2008.
Okay.
And so there were some great growth years. Of course, 9/11 happened during that time frame. But we had tremendous growth and tremendous success. Had a great team. One thing I didn't realize until I got to World Market Center was just the value of an incredible corporate culture. I knew how important it was, but I didn't realize what it would be like to not have that, or to try and build that culture. And the Shuford family at Century, of course, over 75 years had built just this incredible corporate culture, and Buck Shuford's leadership there and personal character, emanated through the whole company.
I think I remember repeating somebody by the name of Faber's last name a multitude of times at the Pinnacle Awards while handing out Pinnacles. So yes, I guess you guys did come a long way and do great things, because you were well rewarded both by sales, but as well accolades from designers who recognized what their peers were doing well at Century.
Absolutely, and it was a design-driven company, and Bill Faber was an important leader in that regard, and he built a team around him. And a support leadership with Michael Delgadio and people like that. There was just
it's quite a team.
There were some swings and misses, like there always is with design.
Yeah.
If you're out there really pushing on the edges, but there were great success and great collections, and
you had great major collections, as I recall, over the years there. How do those things start? I mean, did somebody get an idea or a theme in their head and say, let's study this particular, it could be anything, could be a series of mansions along the Mississippi or what have you. I mean, how do those things come about? Is it a group think or?
Well, I think first of all, there was a focus on how people were living and how they wanted to live, and at Century's price point, of course, the customer is an aspirational customer.
Yeah.
Generally a very financially successful customer or consumer, and she's looking and wanting to look at how people are going to live, how they want to live, how they aspire to live, and in many cases, like Town and Country was a huge success. The best, I think, maybe Chinois earlier was for Century, but Town and Country was really one of the first distressed, hand polished, rustic furniture collections, and that's when the world was going from very traditional, mahogany veneers and ebony borders and real high gloss finishes, etc., to more or less fussy, more lived in, comfortable, relaxed lifestyle. And so, but it all started with recognizing that was the direction that our customer wanted to live in, and then we would go to various locations that would be supportive of that, and those and pick up things in antique fairs or in other shows.
Store it for later, and you think this might come in handy.
Yeah, and as you know, a lot of individual pieces are recognizable shapes that just are updated, whether it's finish or scale or size or add-ons for electronics today.
Okay, Century Furniture, and then from there, suddenly you're the head of the World Market Centers in Las Vegas. How did that happen?
Well, I was in my early 50s, and I'd been involved with running furniture companies for a long time, and frankly, I really wanted to add some variety to my life. I also wanted an opportunity. I'd wanted to work in the private equity area around really creative people and really ambitious people. People doing bold things, and the owners of World Market Center, the related company, a major New York and Florida developer, and a group of private individuals had built this thing in Las Vegas, this market that had started with extraordinary success, but it had faltered and frankly was in trouble. And I was intrigued with the opportunity to try and save it, if you will. And so the related company made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Good.
And so I went to Las Vegas. I thought it was always an incredible opportunity from the construct of being a Western market, the Western United States, that there was a need. And fundamentally, the project was in trouble and not savable because of two things. One, they had a focus of trying to obviate High Point and compete against High Point, which frankly is just a fool's errand. High Point was 100 years old at the time, an incredible global brand, and incredible value for the buyers that come and the sellers. And then secondly, they were just massively in debt. They had spent about $1.1 billion building the campus, and about $1 billion, and they were in debt $1.1 billion. So there was no equity in the business.
No, sir. Yeah.
And this was in a day financially when trees were growing to heaven.
True.
And frankly, had they stopped with the first two buildings, they may have survived the recession, but they didn't. And in July of 2008, the third building came out of the ground, 2.8 million square feet, not pre-leased, and it was just I was there a very short time and realized, look, this is something that's going to be restructured, and financially is probably going to be foreclosed, which it was. And again, back to setbacks and what some people would view as a failure, I viewed as an incredible opportunity. And the opportunity was to buy assets at a significant discount. In the middle of the recession, most people were running for the exits. But there were smart people that were investing a lot of money, and they made a lot of money on their investments in, that 2009, 2010 timeframe. So I didn't panic. I just thought this is really an opportunity for a different ownership structure. There's inherent value here, and that kind of got things going.
I was just thinking about that because I remember prior to World Market Center in Las Vegas, there was a San Francisco market, there was a Dallas market, there were markets all over the place. And it started, I guess, the process of San Francisco going out and other things. There was a consolidation either through the industry gravitating that direction or through intelligent people making moves that made sense to them in real estate and coming up with things like this that drew buyers and drew people that wanted to sell product that they made or imported to another location that was apparently a better location and more fun to go to. Correct?
Well, that certainly was part of it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the research clearly showed that the buyers wanted to go somewhere where they could get a lot of work done in the least amount of time, cost effectively. And so the demand in the West was clearly for a Western market, not a bunch of little small regional markets, because you can't get enough work done. You can't see enough broadness of product. Yeah. And if you live in Boise, Idaho, you can hop on a plane inexpensively, get to Las Vegas, shop for 2.5 days. By the way, the average buyer comes to a market for 3 days, and you can be home. And so there was a demand. And ultimately, in our business, market's going to be where the buyers go. So if all the buyers decide to go to Dubuque, Iowa, that's where the market's going to be. Yeah. And so we're just addressing a demand and listening to customers as to what they wanted, and also repositioning Las Vegas so it wasn't competing against High Point.
And that was my next comment or question to you, was regarding that. There was some angst. There was lots of grinding of teeth and gnashing of teeth over a couple of years, and then suddenly, how did the idea come to merge and so forth? How did that all come together? The two entities into IMC.
Well, I saw at that time basically the real estate market collapsing, and but it wasn't going away. Whether it was commercial real estate of various ilks or residential real estate, it was just getting adjusted back to an investment level that was rational. And so I knew somebody was going to be able to buy the Las Vegas campus at a significant discount out of foreclosure. And then I saw that there was significant distress in High Point. There had been basically a price war, and prices for leases had collapsed about 40%.
Wow.
And yet the value of the High Point market was undeniable. You had to come. The value was there, and so there were a number of buildings in High Point that were in foreclosure or bankruptcy. And
So there was an opportunity right there in front of you.
There was just a huge opportunity, and of course I didn't know how to go about raising $1 billion, but I knew the related company did.
Oh,
and
excellent.
So I approached them and said, look, here's the idea. I think that if we could put together a company to buy significant assets, about 6.5 million square feet in High Point, and the 5.5 million square feet in Las Vegas, we could repurpose Las Vegas, and we could invest heavily in High Point because it had been underinvested for a decade or more.
Noticeably so, for sure.
Just basic infrastructure that it could be financially rewarding. And after 9 months of hard work and angst, and we were able to pull the deal together with Bain Capital and Oak Tree Capital Management as our partners. And that began a really, really rewarding journey, and we've built a fantastic company.
Well, speaking of journeys, now you've taken another step in that journey, the acquisition of this entity by Blackstone, I believe, has happened recently.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that? How did that come about? What's your feeling about that?
Well, with private equity owners, the good news is that you've got access to incredible capital. So you can do things if you're capital constrained, you just couldn't do. Mm-hmm. Bain and Oak Tree were fundamentally, the builders with me and the management team of a great business, knowing full well that their investment cycle is somewhere from 5 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so at the 6-year mark, we basically went out in a very, very edited process for the best investors for this business for the next cycle. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt that being private was a lot better than being public. Mm. Now we're getting into the size where you start limiting the types of investors that can write checks for $1.5 billion or $2 billion.
True.
But immediately Blackstone, who's the largest private equity firm in the world and the largest owner of real estate globally, was really interested, and so we're in the process. We're looking to close the end of September.
Great.
But they, along with some private investors, Fireside and management, mm-hmm. are going to be the new owners, and it's exciting because Blackstone is a builder of businesses. They are aggressively growth oriented, and you look at what they've done with other real estate projects. They've invested heavily in amenities and improvements to make the experience better, whether they're hotels, they own mm-hmm. Hilton and La Quinta, or their office buildings and the public area amenities, and they just are aligned with us in having a better product.
Well, it sounds like that's the step that you needed to take to get to where you want to go with the future. Bob, a few years ago, and you've been a great help to the ASFD over the years with our Pinnacle Awards in support of good design in the industry and building our organization, which we much appreciate. But a couple of years ago, you said something that good design was fabulous. It was great. Good design is terrific, but the ultimate goal of good design is to make people happy. And to make them happy with products that they buy, that they put in their home because they're going to have to live with it. In that vein, in that direction of your comments a couple of years ago, can you tell me your feelings about the importance of design in the furniture industry today?
Well, it's important in a number of ways. And, mm-hmm. and I think, first of all, I'm impressed you remember my comments about making people happy. But again, great design allows people to live like they aspire to live. Mm-hmm. And everyone has a dream of what living well looks like. And designers are in a unique position to be able to do that for people, to give them that ultimate gift. Mm-hmm. The tricky part is most people don't know what that is, or they can't express it, which is a challenge for designers. But, I think about, art in that regard for people that appreciate art, whether you're a modernist or a traditionalist, a classicist, it's what makes you happy. And design has to fill that same kind of need. And in many cases it does. I have never been in a room with someone that had redone their home with a designer that said, gee, I wish I didn't do that.
Okay.
Almost everyone said, how come I didn't do that sooner? Why didn't I do that with my house when we first moved in, et cetera?
As they're taking you on their tour of their home, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So designers are in the happiness business. they've got a gift to give, and what's challenging is, again, people don't really perceive that on the front end, and therein lies a great opportunity. The other thing, on a different line of thinking, is if you could imagine an industry without a design sense, without change, without providing aspirational product, what you basically have is an industry that's a commodity. And I would hate that. And I look at, there's great product with appliances for homes, but there's only 5 people making washers and dryers. And by the way, you can have the same washer and dryer in Dubuque, Iowa that you can have in Laguna, California, or maybe New York City. It's become a commodity. I would find that disinteresting and unmotivating and no fun. And so I've always wanted to fight this commoditization aspect. A chair is not just a chair, is a chair is a chair. And it's not something just to sit on.
Yeah.
And therein lies, again, a great opportunity for designers to add value for their customers and consumers.
You've been in your career in management of many companies. You probably had a lot of experience with designers making presentations of ideas to you and to your staff and to your team. Do you have any reflections on the importance of business knowledge for designers with their own shingle hung up, with their independent designers, if you will, when they come to make presentations to key manufacturers? Is there anything they should be more aware of? And I'd say you're speaking not only to our audience that are well-heeled professionals, but also young people who are considering coming into this industry as in the design profession. What do you think? What's the importance to you of their business sense of running their little business and making presentations properly?
Well, I think the first thing that comes through is that I've not met a great designer that wasn't a great salesperson and a great promoter. And ultimately, you're answering the question, why should we do this? And the why should be because it's new, and it's meeting a need, or it's reinforcing a lifestyle change. And I think that's where the business acumen comes in. It's I don't think being more financially astute is going to convince a manufacturer or somebody running a supply chain of why they should buy something, because they've got the talent to engineer it to a price point.
Right, exactly.
But the idea and answering the question, why is this new and why is it important, and doing it with enthusiasm and passion and professionally is really a way to get to yes, let's make this.
Yeah. So in a way, you're kind of giving a kind of a description of how they should behave as part of this team, bringing a product to market. That's their part in this process with merchandisers and the manufacturers, staff out in the factory or overseas, developing the actual samples and then eventually the first productions. Within that structure, do you have any business advice you might impart to people that are either have design organizations now or are looking to maybe hang their own little shingle out there down the road? Is there any advice you'd like to impart to them that might stick for a while and they'll remember later on going, yeah, Bob said this and I need to make sure I do this?
Well, I think first of all is you have to avoid Me Too-ism. There's just that natural tendency. And also, when you're passionate and enthusiastic about something, you're also going to be, from a practical standpoint, asked to compromise some part of the design, and you got to know where that line is. And again, it gets back to, if somebody else is doing it, or it's part of what's becoming a commodity, that's not why someone is hiring a designer.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you balance that creativity with some flexibility?
And a little bit of knowledge of maybe what this company and their supply chain, if you will, can do and what they maybe can't do.
I also would add, John, that I think that a designer today has to be a student of lifestyles and where things are going.
Research.
What's the impact on houses for self-driving automobiles? I just read a really interesting thing. And I believe it's going to happen. Maybe 10 years down the road, but all of a sudden there's no need for garages. Now you've got a whole different set of rules as it relates to how houses look.
Kind of sounds like what happened with flat screen TVs and then the old cabinets.
Right. Armoires are, you don't see very many anymore. But I think a designer from a business standpoint, understanding what does the future of the home look like, and what are all of these social and economic and technological changes doing to how people live and how they're going to live. And that's where the magic's going to be.
That's a major word of advice to not only professionals now, but also to students that are listening in, that are studying right now to be the future furniture designers of our industry.
I think if there was words of wisdom or advice, it would be to be a lifelong learner. That adapting to the future and changing is all around being a lifelong learner. And there's no better way to learn than be associated with really sharp, smart people that are ambitious, they're playing to win, they're passionate. And you surround yourself or you work in that kind of environment, and you've got a perspective that the world's changing, it's changing fast, and I want to stay ahead of it. You'll figure it out.
Well, Bob, on that note, the perfect ending. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
A big thanks to Bob Maricich for sharing his story and his insights into the furniture industry. Design Between the Lines is produced by Element Studio with the American Society of Furniture Designers. We're recorded in High Point, North Carolina. To learn more about ASFD, visit asfd.com. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more industry stories of Design Between the Lines.